Hello, in this video we will talk about web workers in JavaScript. If you have programmed in C++, Java, or read about operating systems concepts like threads, then you might be wondering, in JavaScript, which is a single threaded application, basically a language, how will you create threads? Or even if we don't create thread, let's say if you are aware of the concept of event loop, for which I have a video also, I'll put in the description. If you don't know the concept of event loop, please check it out. That even in case of event loop, if there is some task which is taking lot of CPU cycles, will it make your web page unresponsiveness? So you might have seen this experience with some pages. If you have scrolling on that one particular page, it will show unresponsiveness. Either wait or kill that particular tab. Have you gone through that experience? Can you understand what's happening behind the scene? Why it is showing that particular of experience to the you? So basically, when you create some logic which is taking a lot of time, let's say you're doing a lot of mathematical calculations, or you are doing some APIs calls, right, which is taking time, then how your web page will remain responsive? In one event loop, if it takes a lot of time, then the experience can be very bad. So to solve those type of problems, we have a concept of web browser. This is a web API provided by browser. Browser basically handle that heavy lifting task for your application in JavaScript. Let's see with an example. You have a browser and you have opened some page, let's say xyz.com. Okay, now in this page, let's say you are doing lot of graphical representation or mathematical representations, which is compute intensive, means it will take a lot of CPU. So with that experience, you may have some bad experience of unresponsiveness. To solve that problem, what happens? We can use web worker. And web worker will help us in delegating the heavy lifting task to background threads, basically provided by browser. So here some logic, let's say some function which is doing some maths function of math, right? And this function is doing a lot of calculation. So we can, in a file, let's say we have a funcmath.js. In this file, we will put our logic, function A, function B, right? Now, whatever the logic is there, we can create a web worker using a web worker API. And this will take a file name, which is the starting point of this web worker. Right now, this, how will you interact? Now what happens? A new thread is created, right? So you have your own logic, your own script, and let's say this line is added at this. So this will create another worker node, and which is running this logic. Okay, so your code is executing here, and in the background thread, this code is getting executed. Now how will your main application and this web worker will interact? This web worker will have two functions. One is post messages and one is on message. So we have some events which will trigger these two functions. So if we call post message, so within this function we can call this post message, which will send the message, basically the output of whatever the logic it has run, into the main thread. And in the main file, what you can do, because we have the handle of the worker w, then on message, let's say this is event, right? Now on message, it will has its own logic, and the logic can be, let's say, print the whatever calculation is done by this function, this file. So console log event.data. So this event will have a data field which will contain all the results which is returned by this here in this thing. So this is how we can do multi-threading, a kind of multi-threading in web application that we create. And the threads will be not in the JavaScript, but it is a part of the web API provided by browser. So this is how you make your application more responsive and do some heavy lifting things like mathematical computation or graphical things that we have to do ultimately, but that thing will be drawn by the main thread. These worker threads don't have the access of the DOM. So your web application, it has some DOM architecture, right? Basically, these are the HTML elements which is drawn on your page. So this DOM is not accessed by your web workers. They have to do post message, and in the post message, your main thread should listen on message of that particular event and do all the calculation and manipulation of that DOM, right? And this is a very powerful technique in web applications of modern time, because you might have seen some experiences. For example, in Google Docs, if you type, it will show, if your internet is broken, it will show, the experience is offline, but once you connect, you can get connected with the backend server, and you can get the latest data, or whatever you have typed, that data will go to the backend server. Similarly, there are multiple things which is a specialized kind of web workers called service workers. So service workers are created by the basically browsers, but these are the specialized web workers which do a lot of other things provided by browsers to have the modernized web application called progressive web app. Okay, so let's talk about what are the limitations and challenges with the service workers. So service workers are the specialized form of web workers, and these act as a proxy between your browser and server and the network. So let's say you have a browser which is providing those web apps and your server, right? And there is a network. So the network call, whatever the request and response which is coming through, it will be used by web service workers, and it will act as a proxy. So the proxy is basically which is acting on behalf of something else, right? So here, let's say we want some application where it will work offline as well. For example, Google Docs. When you type, if there is no internet, your data will be saved to the local storage. But as soon as you get in contact with the network, your network connection is established, that whole data will be transferred to the backend. And similarly, There are few apps which works offline as well, like you on Dropbox, you store the files, right? And then the syncing, and let's say somebody else also stored files on a different machine. Now all those files, whenever these client machines comes in contact with the network, all those syncing will happen. So the files which is existing in the Dropbox will come to client 1 as well as client 2. This is what I am saying. Let's say this is our Dropbox, right? And Dropbox is basically a software which will help to sync files, right? And this it's a cloud storage. So if you have in this laptop, you pasted a file in that particular folder and there is no internet, and this person has also added a file in that folder which he has synced in your local machine, and he has a connection, so this file will be transferred to the server. Now later on, when this particular client will get connection, right, with the internet, so this file will be transferred to the Dropbox, and this file is already which is existing here, it will be synced to his machine, right? So this is how the offline syncing will happen, and all this is done through web workers, and web workers are used in many other applications. For example, if you have seen, there are few cases where you get the pop-up of notifications, some news websites or something, emails, right? You get a pop-up that that particular website want to send some notifications to you. How this is happening? And this is happening through service workers, because it is not blocking. In the backend call, the server worker will handle that logic of notifications which is running continuously and checking your, let's say, email things, or it is syncing from the backend website, news website. If there is any new news, so the notification will come to that service worker and it will send it to you on your desktop. So similarly, there are other examples like in Facebook. When you scroll, you have a very seamless experience, right? On your machine, let's say this is of this size and you are able to see only 4 or 5 images, right? When you scroll, other images looks like they are already there, but if you scroll very fast, right, then at the bottom you say you see a syncing icon which is saying that yeah, images are fetching. So what this particular web app is doing, Facebook web app, is let's say you are on till this particular point, it is already in the background fetching the other images which will come after this. So if you scroll slowly, your experience is much better, but if you go very fast, and then that service worker may not be able to fetch all the images, that's why you see that particular icon. So all that background thing is done in the service workers. So service worker are very useful thing which is used by the modern web apps if you want to create. Also there are some limitations which service worker poses. For example, they will not have the access of DOM because of just like the same as a web worker. This is because these are the background threads which is running, and they are not allowed to change the DOM architecture. Only that can be done through main thread. So you have to post the message in the web worker, in your service worker. So the main thread will take and trigger the event, whatever the logic you want to trigger. And the limitation is service worker are not, you cannot run in HTTP. It will run only in HTTPS. Now, what is the difference? S stands for security. So basically, this is TLS layer is added, right? And data will be encrypted in HTTPS. So you, whatever data is interaction is happening between the client and server using the HTTPS, it is encrypted. Nobody can read the data, which is called attack in the middle, right? So that is not possible in HTTPS, whereas HTTP can do that. So to avoid any security issues, service worker can't be used in HTTP, which is restricted by the browser, web apps, web APIs, right? So this is one of the major issue when you are doing the development. It hinders basically in the development process, but there are some plugins which we can use for testing. However, in production, you can't use this web service in HTTP. Another limitation is of dynamic imports. So in JavaScript, right, you might have seen a dynamic import, like you using this API import, and then in the curly braces you can have a file path, and this means the file will be downloaded when this particular instruction will be executed. Before this you can have few lines, and even after this. So this dynamic import helps in loading the files when needed, not at the start of the loading the page. So let's say you opened a website, all the files will not be downloaded at the start. With a dynamic import, when that particular thing is required, then only that particular file will be downloaded from the server. This helps in experience again. During the initial loading, it will take less time, but in service worker, dynamic imports can't be used. So experience, because this also enhances the experience because it is running in background and provide the async behavior. So it won't matter much of these restrictions, right? So I hope you got the idea of web workers and a specialized web worker called service worker, which are provided by the browsers. So if you have any question, please let me know in the comment section. I will be more than happy to answer those questions. And if you have any other doubts, you can post that, and any other topics that you want me to create a video, I'll be more than happy to create video on those topics as well. Please like this video and share with your friends. Click on the like button so that it can reach to other members, other students as well. Subscribe to this channel. This will help this channel to grow and reach to more potential users and students, so that they can enjoy the benefit of learning. With this note, I will take a leave. This is BK from Anika signing off.